Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Grasping the Nettle event. My name is Martin Fair. I'm going to be hosting this evening. I come down from Arbroath for Grasping the Nettle events, and I'm always delighted when they're based in the West Coast, especially one like tonight when I can get Lorne sausage, which is less common where I'm now living. Tonight, our event is called Social Media, Heads Above the Parapet. It's a wee bit ironic talking about above that we've come down to the dungeon of the Alone Hotel, but nonetheless I think it will be ideal for our purposes. Let me introduce to you Ronnie Convery, who is the Communications Director of the Archdiocese of Glasgow. And Ronnie, we're very much looking forward to your presentation tonight. But let me begin by asking a couple of questions and then just reflecting briefly by way of introduction. Who all around the table has heard of Casey Neistat? Well, Neil, yeah, taking out you. Around the table, Casey Neistat, that would be none of you, as far as I can see. He speaks to my son every night, who is 18. He lives in New York, Casey Neistat. His videos have been watched 11 billion times on YouTube. He's 3.5 million subscribers. And every night, without my permission, he speaks directly to my son. And I suggest he's probably got more influence over my son than I do. He's 18, Fraser, and this is his world. None of us had heard of him, take note. And then, in the world of Twitter, Neil Horan, one-time X Factor celebrity, member of One Direction. He's 30th in the world in terms of leading numbers of Twitter followers. A mere 39 million people listen to him every day. One or two others. Miley Cyrus, Disney star, singer. 41 million people listen to and read her tweets each day. LeBron James, NBA basketball star. He was told he should keep out of politics and so adopted the hashtag for his Twitter feed, "Well, I'm not shutting up." And 42 million people, a testimony to that he hasn't shut up since. The Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, 42 million followers on Twitter. And we go on, Bruno Mars, another singer, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Jennifer Lopez, singer, Donald Trump. How did he ever get to keep his phone when he was inaugurated? We'll never know. Shakira, singer. Demi Lovato, Disney star. 56 million followers on Twitter. Selena Gomez, who's all heard of her? She's the Disney star again. Well done for those who nodded there. Ariana Grande, singer, 57 million followers on Twitter. Britney Spears, 57.5 million, just keeping ahead in the charts. Kim Kardashian, 60 million followers on Twitter. Lord preserve us. Kim Kardashian has that kind of influence and tweets on average 16 times a day. And you could go all the way down. Justin Timberlake, Cristiano Ronaldo, 72 million followers on Twitter, highest paid sports star in the world. On towards the top of the charts. Lady Gaga, number 6 in the charts, 78 million followers. Hold your breath, who's going to be top? Taylor Swift, number 5. Rihanna, another singer, 87 million followers. She's number 4. Barack Obama, number 3, 100 million followers. Justin Bieber, 106 million followers. Another, well, it says here the most popular Canadian on Twitter. I think he's just the most popular Canadian, but that's not saying much. And then top of the charts, Katy Perry, singer, 110 million followers on Twitter. So if I go a little further down, I get to this, Grasping the Nettle, none. Because today we don't have a Twitter feed, never mind millions of people following us. Now, the average age of folks in my Kirk session is 71. I worked it out today. Just a little statistical exercise. We've got some younger people in our church, but it so happens the elders, average age 71, none of them have Twitter. And few will use other social media platforms. But friends, if we are going to influence our nation, and let me go bigger than bolder than that, if we're going to change the world, it's my son Fraser we need to speak to. And his friends who are 18 and 17 and such like. And presently, we have little or no impact among that age group. And I put it to you that if it's going to be possible, and if it's ever going to happen, then social media will absolutely be part of that strategy. We've dipped our toes in through Grasping the Nettle, but we've got a long way to go on that journey. So tonight, to that end, we have invited Ronnie to come and to present to us. First part of the evening will be that, Ronnie's input, then we will take a short break to let us stretch our legs, and then we'll do some more interactive things in the second half, giving a chance perhaps to do some Q&A and to reflect together. So with that introduction, thank you for coming, and Ronnie, over to you. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's easy to be distressed almost when you hear these numbers and begin to lose heart and think, oh my goodness, these pop stars have such huge influence on people. And it's true that they do have some influence on people, but numbers are not everything. It's about quality as much as quantity. Okay. Now, I just want to start tonight's presentation by telling you a story. The story of 3 balloons. So, this story relates to my daughter, Maria, who is 27, and on New Year's Eve in Paris, her boyfriend proposed to her. How romantic. So they're getting married, and they decided to have an engagement party in January. And ever helpful parent, I was asked to go and collect the balloons for the engagement party. Okay, set out from my house to a very snowy Bear's Den, to a house one Saturday morning, knocked the door, and found a hall full of balloons. Okay. They asked my name, gave my name, and I was handed 3 balloons and asked to part with £70. Okay, £70 for 3 balloons. They were nice balloons, I have to say. They were spherical balloons, kind of gold, and they had the initials of the fidanzati, the bride-to-be and groom-to-be. But £70 seemed to me rather a lot of money. So I thought, I want to just investigate a little bit about this company or this person who is making such obvious profits from blowing up balloons. And I discovered that the company effectively exists only on social media. There is no shop. There's not even a website. This company exists only on Instagram. We'll come on to Instagram later. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Instagram is basically a social media platform which allows you to show pictures, okay? And this company is clearly making a huge profit just from displaying attractive images on Instagram with very few words below it. So that made me think, if social media can have such an impact and such success with very few words, just some pretty pictures really on social media, should we not, as salesmen, if you like, for the gospel, for a bigger message, for the fact that there is such a thing as a God out there, there is a God question to be answered, should we not also be using this form of engagement with people to sell a much more important product? Okay. We've had some numbers before. I won't kill you with numbers now, but this is, I thought, quite interesting. So the world's population is 7.5 billion. It's probably 7.6 billion since I wrote that yesterday. Mobile phone access in the world is 5.1 billion compared to access to toilets of 4.5 billion. It's very easy for us to sometimes think that smartphones are the preserve of the rich, of the middle class, of the trendy. But the reality is that they have become mass market, literally more mass market than access to clean toilets. Some more numbers for you. Last year, 1 million new internet users came online every day. Okay, 11 people per second. Don't worry, I'm not good at maths, so I've not done how many will have come online by the time I've finished, but it's a lot, okay? Social media use is up 9% last year to reach 3.5 billion people. Now, if we go back, you can see that's pretty much half the world's population. 3.5 billion people are using social media. Now, obviously, in this country, proportionally, those numbers are higher. Wealthier country, better access to 3G, Wi-Fi, and so on. That, though, I think, is the most significant and the most scary number of all. Average time social media users now spend each day just on social platforms. We're not talking about time spent on the phone or time browsing the internet or time checking the weather or the train times. Just on social media platforms, 2 hours, 16 minutes. Okay. How many of us here spend 2 hours, 16 minutes reading the Bible every day, praying every day, meditating every day? None of us, I suspect. But the average user is spending 2 hours, 16 minutes on social media. Let me go back. So, just as in the early church, St. Paul went to where people were. You look at his journeys around the Mediterranean to Rome, to Athens, to Ephesus, and so on. He went to where people were. He didn't wait for people to come to him. We have to do something similar today, but our journey doesn't have to involve being shipwrecked. It doesn't have to involve taking our lives in our hands. It involves taking our smartphones in our hands and spending a bit of time trying to work out where people are at and be there with them. Okay? Our challenge as evangelizers, if you like, has always been to reach out and encounter people where they're at. And that means online. And if people of all ages are living in this gigantic network, then we need to be in there too, dialoguing with the inhabitants of this world, with the men and women who live on social media. You have heard the term digital natives, meaning young people who grow up and who just seem to instinctively know how to work a smartphone or how to work an iPad and so on. We shouldn't really be so surprised at that. Our generation kind of instinctively grew up knowing how to dial a phone, didn't we? Those old phones, we used to do that. Nobody had to do it, teach us. So similarly, nowadays you don't have to teach a 2 or 3 year old how to get online, how to record something, how to use the camera, and so on. We have to get used to the fact that that is the lingua franca of young people. And increasingly, as the years go on, of middle-aged people too. There is an age distinction on social media. I think you mentioned that some of your Kirk session were not on Twitter, or none of them, I think you said, were on Twitter. The figures that I have here are that 89% of 18 to 29-year-olds are using social media, so about 9 in 10. That's of the under 30s. Between 30 and 50, it's about 3/4. And between 50 and 60, it's 60%. So even up to 60 years old, the majority of people are using social media in one way or another. And just to give you an idea of how powerful it can be, there was a very kind of significant breakthrough last year when the singer Beyonce, you have heard of her, I wouldn't ask anyone to name one of her songs because I couldn't name one myself. But anyhow, she, if you like, bypassed the normal means of publicity and mass media releases. She didn't have a radio campaign. She didn't have multiple TV appearances. She didn't spend any money advertising the launch of a new album. No brand promotions at all. Instead, she simply announced on Instagram with one picture and a caption, the one word surprise, that she was launching a new album. Okay? That one picture sent the music world into meltdown. What she did was she was releasing her new album on iTunes with zero warning. And with that one Instagram post, Twitter reported 1.2 million tweets about it in just 12 hours. And the album sold more than 800,000 copies in just 3 days, making it iTunes' fastest-selling album worldwide. All of that with just one picture on Instagram. Okay. Now, obviously, you and I can put one picture on Instagram and we're not going to become millionaires, we're not going to change the world. But in our own way, we can change people's lives in a smaller goldfish bowl, you might say, or in a smaller way. Okay? There are different ways of looking at this use of social media in evangelization. One is to see these new media as a tool in which we can reach people with the message of the gospel. We can reach out to the peripheries. We can reach out to people that we do not yet know so that they can understand that, in this case, what we are trying to get them to think about, that there is no contradiction between a belief in God and scientific research. And in doing so, hopefully, we bring them to reflect more and maybe bring them into a direct exchange. Because, let's put it bluntly, social media are great at establishing some sort of contact, but nothing is better than human contact. That's ultimately the best kind of contact of all. Okay? In the Acts of the Apostles, St. Paul talks about going into Athens. And he is amazed to see that the city is full of idols. He says, this is verse 21, all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. That could be us talking today about the people on the internet, couldn't it? The late St. John Paul II saw the internet as being what he called the new Athens, the new Areopagus, a global village. And if only to be able to reach our young people, and increasingly people of all ages, we need to be present in that new Areopagus, just as St. Paul was present in Athens. Since people are spending so much time in that virtual world, this is a world that people do not leave behind. Even if they're not glancing at their phones, they have them in their pockets, and often they'll have them set to alert them if somebody tweets or if somebody posts something on Facebook, obviously if the phone rings and so on. Many people leave them on all night. How many of us look at the phone last thing before we go to bed and first thing in the morning? This is an incredibly powerful tool. And so if it has become so important to people's lives, we obviously have to be there. When we speak about evangelization, more often than not, we tend to think of the real world. But millions of people, as we have said, live not in a particular country. Yes, they live in a particular country, but realistically, they spend their lives, their culture is dominated by what they pick up on the social networks. Okay, so Facebook currently has 2.38 billion users. That is bigger than any country in the world. It's bigger than any language group in the world. You might call it the biggest country in the world, is the country of Facebook. But the majority of people using Facebook will never enter a church. Most of them will never open the pages of the Bible. Most of them will know very little about Jesus Christ. Therefore, our challenge has always been to reach out and meet people where they are. Okay? So, what I want to do now is just look at the various types of social media. There are an increasing array And it's easy to become discouraged because people start talking about all sorts of ones you haven't maybe heard of, like Flickr or Instagram or Snapchat and so on. Tonight I just want to focus on 3: Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Okay. Facebook is the biggest. As I said, over 3.8 billion people using Facebook. So what I've prepared for you here is the Facebook page of the organisation I work for, which is the Archdiocese of Glasgow. This was launched in 2010. I remember going to Archbishop Conte, who some of you know, I think he's actually one of your patrons, and saying to him, Your Grace, there's something called social media. You don't need to know what it is, but it's influencing a lot of people. And I would like your permission for us, as the Archdiocese of Glasgow, to have a presence on there. And I remember him saying, I don't know what you mean, but if you think it's a good idea, then I'm very keen. So that was fine. We set up a Facebook page. It was so unheard of in those days, in 2010, that it actually made the Herald newspaper. There was a story done, Catholic Church goes on to Facebook. That was considered completely revolutionary and almost scandalous, you might say. Nowadays, it seems so obvious that, why would you not do it? But back in 2010, it was considered pretty unusual. Now, what I am showing you there is just a typical page. That was 2 days ago. And just to go through it, I don't know, are all of you familiar? Are all of you on Facebook personally? No, right? Let me assume nothing, okay? I'll assume nothing, okay? So when you're starting a page for an organisation, you'll be asked to do several things. First of all, you want to give it a name, okay? In this case, Archdiocese of Glasgow, obviously. So that will come at the head of all of your posts, okay? And also a logo. Now, it's always worth trying to capture people's attention. The visual image is so important nowadays. People have really lost, I'll come back to this again and again, people have lost the capacity for reading lengthy articles. They've even lost the capacity to read short articles. An impressive visual, recognisable image is really so important. This is an image of St Mungo, who's the patron saint of Glasgow. Okay. Now, when you are posting a news story, this is a post here. I don't know if you can read it from where you are. I'll read it to you. Archbishop Tatalio will offer a Mass for Sri Lanka at 12 noon on Sunday, April 26th in St Andrew's Cathedral. It will recall in prayer all who died last week, as well as the bereaved and injured following the bomb outrage which has claimed the lives of more than 300 people. All welcome. So it's basically just an announcement, announcing that something's going to happen and encouraging people to come along. 2 things that I would point out about that. One, it's short, okay? I haven't counted them, but there's probably about 100 words there. Why is it short? It's because if we make it too long, we won't read it. And it comes with an attractive image. If you're wondering what that image is, someone said to me, it looks as if you have a swimming pool in the middle of the cathedral. That is actually taken, there's a marble baptismal font in the middle, and I took that picture by placing the camera right up against the baptismal font. It's only as wide as this table, but from that image it looks as though it's a massive pool. But it's simply to be an arresting image. All you're trying to do is grab people's attention. And again, the visual is so important. If I had just put that announcement up without any image, then the number of people reading it would have been way, way, way down. A fraction of those who will read it if we have an attractive image. Okay. I'm just looking at what it says there. 11,000 people reached and 1,870 engagements. So Facebook is very good for giving you a sense, giving you feedback straight away. You know how well you're doing. So between putting that announcement up and taking that snapshot, 11,000 people had been reached and 1,870 had engaged. That means they had pressed like or downloaded it or shared it or engaged with it some other way. Okay. Now just think of that, back in old money, if you had been trying to reach 11,000 people, think of the postage, if nothing else. You'd be bankrupt. And it would have taken you weeks to fill envelopes and invite, and you wouldn't have been able to get the information out in time for what was going to happen. So you can see the huge advantage of using something like Facebook to invite people to something, to make an announcement, to comment on a current event. It's instant, it's free, and you are reaching vast numbers of people. Basically, just to explain to those of you who never used any of these media, if you think of the model of pyramid selling, yeah, so you're selling a cosmetic and you get your sister and your brother to buy the cosmetic, and they get their workmates, and each of their workmates gets their friends, and each of their friends gets their relatives, and so on. It becomes like a pyramid, so that from that one initial input, it reaches a vast array of people. So social media is something like that. So I sit in my office and type that in and press a button, and off it goes, and it has reached 11,000 people because it firstly reached 100 people who then shared it, and then it reached 5,000 who then shared it, and it became 11,000, and so it goes. So that's basically the kind of theory behind it, okay? You will see that, you can't quite see there, but underneath that image there is always a space for comment. So one thing to be aware of with Facebook is that it is interactive, okay? It is not just something for you to broadcast. It is a way to engage with people and them to come back to you. So it's only half the battle to put up an engaging post. The other half of the job, if you like, is to look at the comments that are coming in and moderate them. So sometimes it's a rough old world out there. You'll get nasty comments, you can get abusive comments, you can get racist comments. So whoever is in charge of your page, whoever is the moderator, has to be aware of that and be on top of it. You can set the social media to alert you every time a comment is made. That can be a job and a half if you're being alerted every few seconds when someone says something. But it's certainly worth checking that regularly just to make sure there is nothing on there that is offensive or aggressive or criminal even. I've had cases, for example, especially when you have a controversy. So some of you may remember the case last summer where a priest was spat on at an Orange March in Glasgow, and there was all sorts of problems. And that led to hundreds of thousands of responses, and you can imagine then that became grim. It became a war of attrition between two sides, throwing abuse at each other, and horrendous language, and nasty allegations, and slander and so on. So we have to be aware of that. That can happen, but you have to keep your eye on it. And there's ways of setting filters, for example, whereby there are certain words. If you say, I don't want the word bigot to appear on my screen, then every time someone posts using the word bigot, it just will not appear. Okay, so you can filter it, you can screen out particularly offensive phrases. So remember that. Posting is one thing, you're reaching people, but also listen. St. Paul, going into the Areopagus, didn't just preach, he also listened to what people had to say. Otherwise, he would have made no converts. Okay. So, let's move on a little bit. I thought with being a Christian audience, we should come up with 10 commandments. So I made these ones up. They're not from anywhere, they're just my own experience. 10 Facebook commandments. So the first one I've touched on before, the iconic image. You really must have a picture to go with your words. Okay. Second, if you're running a Facebook page for an organization, I would really recommend that you update it daily. Okay. Now that might seem like a tall request, tall order, because you're thinking, well, in my little organization, not something new every day. Well, with a bit of imagination, there is something new every day. You can always put forward or put a post about a quote from a book that you're promoting, or about an event that's coming up, or you can steal. It sounds bad, as if I'm encouraging you to steal, but you can see something that is of interest, that matches your values and so on, and replicate it or link to it. You could simply say, fascinating program coming up on BBC Two tonight about faith and science, and give a link to it, and up will pop on your Facebook page. You would type in there, fantastic program coming up, and then you type in there www.bbc.co.uk / whatever the program is, Faith and Science, and automatically up here will pop the front page of that program. So you can always find, I think if you look hard enough, you can always find something to say. Okay. Ideally update it daily. What you do not want, and it's the same for websites, you do not want people coming to your page and seeing it was last updated last September, because there is nothing that screams more loudly, this is a dead organisation, than something which has a page that has never been updated, or has been updated a long time ago. Third one I put there was prioritise local news. I suppose it goes without saying, but people are more interested in something happening in their own backyard than something happening far away. So, if you have an event that is happening in Motherwell, then tell people what's happening in Motherwell. An example I had today, there was a church in the West End of Glasgow called St Simon's in Partick Cross, which was vandalised yesterday in the afternoon. It's open all day, and somebody broke in and smashed it all up, and smashed the statues and pulled the pictures off the wall, and candles were all snapped and so on. And because it's one of the churches of the Archdiocese of Glasgow, I felt I had to put something out, because people, you almost, as an organisation, create an expectation from your followers that you're going to say something about events like that. This was one where I had to walk a total tightrope, because it wasn't clear whether that act of vandalism had been perpetrated by bigoted vandals who were in there to try and ransack a Catholic church because it was a Catholic church, or was it just some drunken thug or someone high in drugs who just kind of went in and, on a high, smashed it up, but could equally have smashed up Tesco, the garden of his next door neighbour. So we had to put something out to acknowledge it, but without jumping one way or another. And I could feel the criticism coming from those who wanted to turn this into a real crusading, this is another case of anti-Catholic hatred, Nicola Sturgeon, you must intervene now, kind of stuff. And on the other hand, people saying, this has to be, no, we shouldn't be saying anything yet until we know the full facts and so on. But either way, that post, which went on Twitter 6 hours ago and Facebook 6 hours ago, the last time I looked just before I started talking had reached just under 30,000 people on Twitter in 6 hours. Okay, Facebook is slower to catch up. We won't see that until a day or two down the line. But you can see that the numbers involved are quite huge, and people, react quite quickly. But it's local news. My point is, if that had been a church in France, or a church in Pakistan, or a church in Australia, nobody would really have cared. What happened mattered because it was local. So anything that you can produce that is local, go with it. Oops. Oh, right, okay. Match the story with a picture. Well, that's a bit like the iconic image, but if you possibly can, get something that is a good match. So in this case, I was able to use pictures of the smashed statues and so on. Keep it short. Again, I've mentioned that before, because people have no capacity for reading lengthy articles. The next set of things are to try and increase the number of people who will follow you. Okay, so how do you get followers? If you just start out as Grasping the Nettle on Facebook, you just set up a page and you create a nice image and you create a post to say, we are here, Grasping the Nettle is now on Facebook. Nobody knows that you're there, because people they don't know that you're there. So the only way you're going to make other people follow you or be aware of you is to, first of all, be aware of them. So think of it almost as though digitally, you have to go up to someone and shake their hand. You have to go up and tap someone on the shoulder and say hi, because you're the new boy in the neighbourhood. You're the new kid in the block. You don't know anyone there. So in order to be known, you have to make that first move. So if I were you starting out, I would start by liking a whole series of other pages of organisations that will have similar interests to your own. Okay, so faith groups, science groups, faith and science groups, local groups. Just, you have to be fairly creative. But I think before you get anywhere, you're going to have to like 100, say, other organisations. It might be church congregations, it might be the Presbytery of Glasgow, it might be the Archdiocese, whatever it is. Start liking other organisations as Grasping the Nettle. And if you, as Grasping the Nettle, like the Archdiocese of Glasgow, I get a little notification, go back the way, up here, which will tell me, see that says liked, okay, so if you like me, I'm going to get a notification to say you have so many new likes, okay? It tells you there. So, for example, last month we got 107 new followers or new likes. Now, when I get a new like as Archdiocese of Glasgow, instinctively I'm going to say, I wonder who those people are that have pressed like, and I'm going to go back and check out who they are. So if you, as Grasping the Nettle, start liking me as Archdiocese of Glasgow, or start liking St John's Parish, or Faith and Science Network, or whatever it is, they're likely to come, see, I wonder who this is, and like you back. So that's the way you are actually making connections. You have to be the first one to make that connection, and the chances are that the person with whom, or the organisation with whom you make the connection, will come back to you. So that's what I mean by like similar sites. Another trick is to create attractive photo galleries. A Facebook page is, in a sense, a wee bit like a website. Besides posting your news, you can have things in there, posts that says that's your news stories. You can put up videos. So if you guys are very good, your audio-visual stuff is excellent. It's rich, well produced, good production values. So short bursts, don't go in for anything lengthy. I would say anything, keep it a minute and a half if you can, under a minute and a half. So you can post videos there, you can post photos there, you can create a beautiful picture gallery of anything that is, that you're interested in talking about. The About page on your home page gives you the opportunity to put your website, a little summary of who you are, what your organisation stands for. So make use of all of those. This is my another one of my little suggestions is alternate wisdom with news. Remember I said you might be struggling for content. You can always fill that with an interesting quote. It might be from Albert Einstein. People think would probably imagine to be a great atheist, and he wasn't an atheist. Or it might be from the Dalai Lama, if you want. It doesn't matter. But wisdom, in other words, kind of words of wisdom, can be alternated with news. Some people react to different things. You need to reach out to people. Some people like, toothy sayings. Other people like pretty pictures. Other people like interesting happenings. Other people like links to what's coming up on the telly. You need to be kind of all things to all people, he says. Not men. Okay. Link to the news cycle. We live in the real world, and we have to be relevant to the real world. So there is no point us talking about, a lunar probe or something like that when the rest of the world is worried about Christmas shopping. We need to be relevant. We need to be reflecting what's happening in the world. If there's a general election on, if people are worried about a plane crash, if there's a strike which is paralysing the commuters or whatever, we try and be relevant to that, okay? And that last one is just a little bit cheeky, but invite everyone. And by that, I mean each of you. Because what I'm saying here about setting up a Facebook page for an organisation applies also to each of us. So each of us can replicate that in our own lives. So, John Smith is going to have his own page. Ronnie Convery I have my home page. And each of us in our home pages can say, great new site from Grasping the Nettle, check it out. And therefore, all my friends, all your friends, all your friends, all your friends are all going to be sent to have a look at the new page. Okay. So that's that. Now remember I said that Facebook's very good at giving you feedback. So it is, this is just an example that I took 2 or 3 days ago, which shows you the kind of feedback you can get for nothing. And this is the beauty of this kind of engagement. You're not having to employ an agency, you're not having to employ researchers, you're not having to send out surveys. From this, you can see, things like page views, page previews, page likes, post reach, how many people have read it, any recommendations, how many people have engaged with something you've said, how many people have looked at videos, how many new page followers you have. More interestingly, you can also get an insight into your audience. Okay, so you can see that this page, the Archdiocese page, it will give us there that we are 66% female audience, 33% male audience. I don't know what the other 1% is, but anyway, 66, 33. And you can see that the highest age group is that one there, 45 to 54. Then the 35s to 44s, and then the 56 to 64. So you can see that you get a fairly clear picture of your own demographic, who you're appealing to, and it means that if you know you want to appeal to a particular group, you know, and you can gauge, is it working if I do more cartoons, or if I do more video or something like that? Is that going to bring up this number of 18 to 24s, for example? Or is it going to turn off the 65 pluses? On top of that, it will also tell you here each country you reach, how many people you're reaching in each country, each city, where the people are looking at your page come from, how many of them are, and what the language, the native language of each of your followers is. All of that information is available on every Facebook page without paying a penny. So it gives you really, really valuable opportunity to find out who your audience is and to work on increasing a particular group within that audience.
How do you find that information?
Yeah, so that is just, if you just go to your Facebook page and go up here, click that question mark. Right. That brings us to here, and you've got all of these options, and you click on people, it will give you that page. If you go to Insights, all along the top, if you go to Insights, it will give you this page here. Okay. So there's these ones along the top and these ones down here. Reach, for example, will tell you how many people you've reached. That would be, the friends of the friends of the friends of everyone who's liked your page. Page views, how many people have looked at it. Actions on page, so some people might have commented, some people might have copied, some people might have reposted, and so on. So take a look behind your Facebook page and look at those things that we tend to ignore, because they do give you some really valuable pieces of information. Okay. Now, we've not got a lot of time, so I'm going to move swiftly on and talk a wee bit about Twitter. Okay. You might say, where does Twitter fit into our strategy? Well, this is how I kind of try to see things. A website for any organization is like your museum. It's where you keep all your important stuff, where you keep your precious documents, where you keep your information bank, your reserves, your useful information, your addresses, your documents, your movies, all of that stuff. That's in your website. Facebook is a kind of shop window, okay? It's where you place things there that you hope that the people who are passing by, going through their ordinary life, might find interesting and might follow up. Twitter is more dynamic than that. It's like a mail shot. It's like actually going out to someone and tapping them on the shoulder and saying, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? So Twitter is short, it's dynamic, it has a very short life. Each tweet probably have a couple of hours life, but it is something that is actually going to impact on someone straight away who happens to see it. Okay. Now, what is Twitter? Well, It used to be, until about a year ago, a system which allowed you to have 140 characters. And by characters, that means spaces between letters and full stops and exclamation marks and so on. Each one of them would count as a character. That was considered to be too restrictive, although it was a magnificent tool for encouraging you to be concise. It's amazing how much you can get into 140 characters when you're forced to. But anyway, Twitter decided after research that people needed a wee bit more space, so it's now 280. They doubled their space available. Research has shown that the most successful tweets are those which have an average of less than 100 characters. Less than 100 characters. That's including all those spaces and full stops and exclamation marks and so on. What does that say? It tells us an awful lot about our capacity to pay attention. That even 280 characters, which is not many words, that might be 50 words, that is too much for many people. It is just too much like reading. They'll just spin on. Because you know what it's like in a smartphone? There's that tendency to just scroll until you see something that really grabs you. And although you have 280 characters that you're available for you, I would recommend you don't use them, because a big meaty tweet like that can actually be difficult for people to read and react to. A bit like Facebook, Twitter does allow you to post images, and I would always say, same rule as you have on Facebook, a tweet with an image is going to do infinitely better than a tweet without an image. So be creative, try and find an image that kind of matches the tweet. Okay. What is it useful for? Well, instant news, because I don't know about you, but if I want to know what is happening in the world, say there's a breaking news story. For example, today the Labour Party was having a meeting about what were they going to put in their manifesto about Brexit, and there was going to be a fight. Were they going to support a referendum or not support a referendum? I'm a news junkie, I confess. I was interested to know, would they support a referendum or not? I didn't go to Sky News, I didn't go to BBC, I went to Twitter, because that is where the most up-to-date information will come. TV news journalists now, besides producing a package for the 10 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock news, are tweeting all the time. So if you go to someone like Robert Peston or Laura Kunsberg, these people are producing vast amounts of material on Twitter. As it happens, short breaking news stories, and they will have, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. So Twitter is excellent for breaking news, telling people about something that's happening instantly. It's also a good thing about prayer reminders. If you have an idea, say you're encouraging your followers to pray for a particular intention, you can set Twitter to tweet at particular periods of the day. You could, for example, tell it that you want it to tweet at 6 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning, which are the peak periods. So useful for that. Alerts and links to website or Facebook. Okay, so in other words, even though you've only got 280 characters, which is not enough to tell your whole story, you can use those 280 characters to say important news about Faith and Science Congress, and put a little link to it, and that will link to another site. So you're using this, if you like, as a postcard to send to someone to say, check out this link. Okay. So what does it look like? So this would be the Twitter page of the Archdiocese. Again, try and make it visually arresting. Okay, you don't have a lot of words. You have a bit of space to that space along the top. You can choose what you want to put in there. I've just gone for the ceiling in St Andrew's Cathedral because it's an attractive looking building, and I've gone for the logo of the Archdiocese there. You can decide that for yourself, but you want to make that attractive. Again, going back to this old, hoary old chestnut about people liking attractive images. There you can also, you give yourself a Twitter name. There's a limit in how many letters you can use. So that had to come down to Archdioc Glasgow, because that was all the letters we could we could have. Twitter doesn't allow you to have a very long Twitter name. It allows you a few words to explain who you are. So you would have space there to talk about what this project exists to do. You have space there for your location, and you have space there for your website. Okay, so all that information is contained, if you like, in the home page of your Twitter feed. Okay, and then this part here is your tweets. Now you can see that since we started, we've tweeted 9,300 times. We're following 600 odd people. We have 6,300 followers and some likes, which are people who like the page but don't follow it. Okay. Your tweet activity, again, a bit like Facebook, it gives you very good feedback. So it will tell you your tweets earned 10,000 impressions in the last week, and it will show you which days got the highest number and which days got the lower number. Okay. So again, you can learn from that. What works? You can look at that. You see, oh, what did I do on Monday that got that number of tweets? And you'll see what works and what doesn't work. Okay. So we have set up, shall we say, this homepage, Archdiocese of Glasgow. And then, like we did with Facebook, we start following people. Okay, because the chances are if you follow an organisation or a person, they'll follow you back. Okay, that way you build up followers of your own. Okay, so the people that you follow, everything they tweet will appear here. Okay, so among the people that we are following is Archdiocese of Glasgow, are Pope Francis, Scottish Catholic Observer, Justice and Peace, and 600 others. So all of those 600 people that we are following, anything that they tweet will appear in this timeline here. And if we like something that they tweet, so say you really like that, I think that's a really interesting phrase, you can click that wee heart, which says like, or you can click on that little image which says retweet. In other words, you are sending that out to all your followers. Okay, you're sharing it effectively with your followers. Or that one, which is a comment. Okay, so every tweet has those three things underneath it, or four in fact. There's comment, retweet, like, and that is share. So if there was something in a tweet that you really wanted to share with other people outside Twitter, then if you go to that little symbol, which is an envelope, it will give you a link which you could just send by email, or you could put on your Facebook page, or you could send by text message. Okay. Again, you can look at the tweet there that has been liked, and it's got another arresting image, hasn't it? It's got people in it, it's got nice colour, it's just an interesting image. Okay. Twitter will also do this, trends for you. It works out where you are, things you're interested in, it will suggest things that you may wish to follow. Okay. Do you know about hashtags? You heard people talking about hashtags. So hashtags, briefly, are, if you like, trends on Twitter. So the hash key on your typewriter, or on your keyboard, or on your mobile phone screen, you put hashtag and then a word. And then anyone on Twitter who is interested in, say, I don't know, Labour referendum, okay? Hashtag Labour referendum. If you type that in at the top there, Labour referendum, and search for it, then you'll get everywhere in the world, anybody that's typed about Labour referendum will pop up on your screen here. Okay, so hashtags can be quite useful if you want people that you are maybe not in touch with, but might be interested in your topic to be in touch with you. Okay. Again, I mentioned to you the ability to get instant feedback. If you remember, let's go back there. So we looked at this, your tweet activity. So you can, if you click on that, right, so you click there, up comes this, which will give you analytics. So there you are, your tweets earned 125,000 impressions over the 28-day period. Shows you which days you had a great success and which days you had almost nobody responding to anything you said. It also gives you your top 10, if you like, the top tweets. This one is the one which got the most impact. So It was about the orange walks, surprisingly enough. So that got 45,000 impressions, okay? The next one was, He is risen, it all makes sense, life is a reason, hallelujah. It was an Easter Sunday tweet, and that got 13,000 responses. And so it goes down. You could scroll down and see, you know, your top 5 or top 10 of the month, okay? And you can learn from that what works, what doesn't work, okay? Okay, so that's Twitter. I know this seems as if I'm rushing through, but we all have time for lots of questions. There are various other bits and pieces. YouTube, you probably know about. YouTube is sharing videos. Flickr is sharing nice pictures. So we have a Flickr page, so it's where we would put out really good quality pictures, high quality images of the cathedral or of the Archbishop or of services or whatever. But the top one there is Instagram. Instagram is where we started. Remember I told you the story of the 3 balloons? Instagram takes the idea of the image to the nth degree, because Instagram is really just about pictures. There is an opportunity to write a few words. But basically what you're doing in Instagram is you take a picture. I could take a picture here, and I go to Instagram, and you open the picture, okay? So I have a picture here, which I've just taken a few weeks ago of a church in Italy, and I could instantly send that to Instagram, to my own Instagram account. Each of you can set up an Instagram account. Grasping the Nettle can have an Instagram account. It costs nothing. It's the simplest thing in the world to set up. You just need to give them an email address and sign up. And again, it's creating lots of space for you to share striking images. And especially for young people, Instagram is the one that they tend to respond to. I know you asked me to kind of give a kind of overview as to what works best for which group. I would say that Instagram is probably where you're going to reach most effectively that 18 to 30 group. It's kind of depressing, you know, the fewer words there are, the younger the group you're going to reach. Brutal but true. So Instagram, which is hugely picture dominated, is going to reach those teens. I know my own kids spend far more on Instagram than they would on either of the other 2 main social media. Facebook is best for an older demographic. It's best for building community. It's really a kind of community building thing, is Facebook. It's about keeping your followers in touch and so on. Twitter is best for reaching out. It can be a jungle, Twitter. It's a place where horrible aggression takes place, where people shout at each other, where people call each other names, especially over politics. Our fractured society over Brexit and independence and all that sort of stuff tends to bring out the worst on Twitter. And that's because people have so little space. They've only got 280 letters, so there's no room really to be nice, so people are pretty horrible to each other. One other thing I would say is that, and it's a classic mistake to make, is the mistake of the echo chamber. Okay, so what does an echo chamber mean? It means that we tend to like, all of us naturally, tend to like and follow people and organizations who we already agree with. Okay? And it's natural. But if we are to be the modern day St. Paul in the Areopagus, he didn't just hang around with the small group of Christians, did he? He went to places where people didn't agree with him and dared to say things and took them on and so on, but always with charity. And that is the key. So we have to avoid the trap of only liking and talking to a small elite group of people that we already agree with, because someone once said, Christians are not called to be keepers of an aquarium. We're called to be fishers of men. So in order to be fishers of men, it's not enough to just keep our own small band of supporters. We need to engage and dialogue with others, but do it with respect. Okay, do it with respect. If I could just say a few words about how I think each of us should engage as individuals on social media, and then I'll stop for a break because I know you've been very patient. In order for us to be effective at engaging with people who do not immediately share our views and our values, we have to be taken seriously as normal people, okay? Normality cannot be taken for granted, and normality can't be overemphasized. If we look like oddities, if we behave like oddities, if we only ever quote verses of the Bible, 99% of the people out there on that social media world will just say cranks and have nothing to do with us, okay? We, each of us, men and women, if we are present on social media, should be balanced, attractive individuals that people of all viewpoints would be interested in engaging with. If we allow ourselves to be seen as crackpots, extremists, fanatics, then nobody, you know yourself, if you have someone in your company who only wants to talk about Karl Marx as the answer to everything, and Marxism is where we're at, and if we don't go back to Marxism, after 2 minutes, you'll write them off as a crackpot, and you want to just talk to someone who has views about the weather, and about holidays, and about football, and about politics, and about, what's happening in the world. In order for us to be convincing apostles and witnesses, we have to be the normal kind of people. And when people appreciate us and value us and, if you like, see us as sensible, intelligent people, if then we talk to them about God, if then we talk about the fact there is no problem between faith and science, then we have an in. Then we have a proper dialogue, because people say, that's quite interesting, that person. But if we have already been written off as cranks, people who only ever want to put up holy things and prayers and verses from the Bible, we're not going to reach anybody other than other people like ourselves. So I would say to you, in your own use of social media, try to be that sensible, moderate, engaged person, and then every now and again drop in the message that you want to put across. It's a far more effective way of doing it than being the fanatic that is, if you like, being seen as the Bible basher and easily written off. Okay. 2 quotes to finish with. This one from Pope Francis. Walk the streets of the digital highway to encounter, like the Good Samaritan, those who are lying off the road, and witness to them in tenderness and love. That's hard, especially on Twitter. If you go onto Twitter, words are hard. Aggression is the order of the day, condemnation, denunciation. To speak to people in tenderness and love is almost shocking, but that's what we should be doing. That is actually going to be more effective than anything else. Now, I don't know what that last one was. That's not mine at all. So, okay, I'll end it there. Okay, so I think the plan is we now stop for a leg stretching moment, and I gather my thoughts, and then we'll have some more question and answer and practical.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie, for that. A great whistle-stop tour through social media world. Saw plenty of you scribbling notes and so on. Hopefully we've all learned something, whether we're novices or with some experience. And what a wonderful point I think you finished up with, regarding that we be normal and that we prove ourselves to be regular human beings, that therefore when we do have something to say, that we've got an audience that is ready to listen. So let's take a comfort break. I'm not sure, 5-6 minutes, something like that. There are refreshments down here. Restrooms are out that way. And then we'll gather again and we'll pick up opportunity for your questions and interaction. Thank you.